Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. You know him, you love him, you read him. You just want to squeeze his cheeks. Our friend from the Wall Street Journal, Steve Moore, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
Well, welcome back to Colorado.
My pleasure.
Now, fair warning, this is airing on Friday night. You have already seen the debate by the time you watch this show. We have not seen the debate yet. That's why you're out here, among other things.
Right.
So this is where you give your prediction, and you look like a complete idiot afterwards. So what?
Right. Well, let me just say this.
How important is it for Romney?
It's really important for Romney. I don't think it's that important for Obama because he's had a pretty consistent lead for the last couple of months. You know, Romney has a problem, John, which is that voters don't like him a whole heck of a lot. You know, and a lot of these, we'd like to think they're all about ideas, but a big part of this is a personality contest, and you know, to that extent, people think that Barack Obama has a better personality than does Obama. And in fact, if I were Mitt Romney, right out of the gate, what I'd say is, look, you know, this is not a personality contest. This is a contest.
But it is a personality contest. For those squishy people in the middle, it's, I like this guy. I can see myself having. I mean, you can't see yourself having a beer with Mitt Romney. I've met Mitt several times.
I've had beers with Mitt Romney.
Have you? Did he drink a beer?
No, he's a very well. I was drinking beer, but you know, he's a very good person, a good man, and he's smart, and he's an incredibly effective leader. I mean, he was a great businessman. It's interesting, isn't it, that the left has somehow turned around the fact that he's successful in business as if it's some kind of vice. I mean, here's a company who started whole companies from Target to Home Depot and was the one who put the initial capital in that made those companies possible, which then created tens of thousands of jobs. He hasn't done a very good job of defending that and saying, I can turn things around because I've turned around failing institutions.
Let me put out a premise and tell me if I'm onto something. One of his strengths in business is a real weakness here in politics, in that I believe he's a pretty humble, modest guy. I don't think he's like most politicians who wants to say, look at what I've done, look at what I've done, look what I've done. He doesn't have that Donald Trump look at me vibe. And I think it has to do with his Mormon upbringing, in that you just don't do that. And in politics, you need to. I'm almost thinking he's politicking too nice.
Well, you know, but there's a flip side to that. I mean, I generally agree with that, but you know, I think Obama suffers a little bit from his arrogance. And you know, he was on, what was it, The View? I'm sure you were watching, John.
I was watching.
Glued to the tube. But you know, you probably saw the soundbite where he said to these ladies, I'm your eye candy. You know, I mean, who says that?
I say that about 3 times a day.
And, you know, so I do think that Barack Obama's perhaps his Shakespearean flaw is his arrogance, that he thinks he knows the answer to everything. And I've always said about Barack Obama, and I've met Obama a couple of times, is that he's a man of great intelligence, but not a man of much wisdom. And there's a difference between wisdom and intelligence. I think that the difference between Romney and Obama is Romney really does understand the way the world works, how you make a profit, how you know, take money and workers.
You and I are both libertarian-leaning Republicans. Your work at Cato Institute for years and Club for Growth, which is a great organization. Right. Romney ain't my first choice. My guess is he's not your first choice either.
We knew this, by the way, even when against what I would describe as a very weak field of Republicans in the primary, he was only getting 30 to 35% of the vote. So, you know, Americans don't love Mitt Romney. He has to make the case, look, this is about tough love, that I'm going to come in, I'm going to make these tough decisions. You may not like a lot of them, but, you know, the economy is in crummy shape right now. It's not in that very good shape here in Colorado. Nationwide, we have less than 1.5% growth. I mean, come on, we should be growing at 4 or 5%. That's the normal recovery pattern. We've had, you know, these numbers. We've had over 8% unemployment for 3.5 years. I mean, that just doesn't work.
Then, after all this,
by the way, it's amazing to me that Barack Obama isn't down by 10 points.
I'm going to ask you, why aren't we just decimating, we conservatives decimating this? How in the world this guy could still be in a tentative lead going into this election blows my mind. And for me, it tells me that my political axiom, that there's nothing Republicans can't screw up, is still alive and active. I mean, what is it that Romney or Team R is doing wrong? Because they are obviously doing something wrong. I still think there's plenty of time to turn it around.
I think, for example, Republicans have various groups that they are not able to reach. One of the ones that I focus a lot on is Hispanic voters. Now, look, you can't tell people we want to build a fence, we want to get rid of your neighbor and your cousin, and then say to the Hispanic voters, we want your vote. I think this immigration issue is a big problem for Republicans. And look, I think my view, I think you share a lot of this, is if anybody wants to come into this country and work, I'm all for it. I don't want people to come in for welfare. For someone who wants to work and clean bedpans, or be a bartender, or do the kind of grunt work in this country and build a better life for their kids, that's what America's all about. I think Americans turn off Hispanics, and the Hispanics should be Republican conservative voters. They're socially conservative. They tend to be Catholic. They are hard workers. They are
have
people
extended
pay taxes.
families
Right.
that they care for.
So we don't.
But it's not. And you've said this before, so I'll steal it from you. It's not the state of immigration that's a problem. It's the welfare state that's a problem.
That's right.
Don't people understand? Or how do we get people to understand that we're at this tipping point? I mean,
right.
We cannot handle any more debt. We cannot spend any more money we don't have. We can't print anymore or go into debt anymore. And I'm worried that we're very close to becoming a European socialist state.
Well,
I mean, I look at what happened in France.
I hate to think we're going that far.
I look at France.
I agree a little bit with what you're saying, but
France
not totally.
has now a 75% tax rate.
Yeah, but we're not France. That's the point.
But we're getting there.
No. I reject that, Jon Caldara. I think that America is as Reagan said, that this is a shining city on a hill. I think Americans, the great thing about Americans is when something is going wrong, we're practical people. We're generally conservative. If something isn't working, we change it. And that's why I still believe that despite all Mitt Romney's problems, people are going to say, this isn't working, we need to change it. And that's, I think, Mitt Romney's strongest point is, look, nothing Barack Obama has done has worked. I mean, all we have to show for $5 trillion of debt is $5 trillion of bonds we now have to pay off, right? We haven't built anything with this. We haven't created industries. We've just got all this debt.
We saved GM.
Right.
Don't you hear that? We saved
and now,
GM.
even these auto companies, they're very fragile. And the next time we go into recession, they could, and by the way, even the Congressional Budget Office says that next year the U.S. economy could slip into another recession. So the economy is very flimsy. It lacks leadership. But I actually do think that if you got a regime change in November, I think the economy could really take off. I think
I'm hearing two things.
There's a case for optimism.
There's a case for optimism,
Yeah.
and that's the problem with you optimists. There's always a case for optimism with you guys. You're a morning person, aren't you? I could tell. You're one of those breakfast is the most important meal of the day types, aren't you? Good morning, beautiful morning.
That's not me, actually.
All right. I'm hearing a couple different things, and right now you believe that if there is a regime change, that business is ready to roll.
Right. I believe that.
That businesses have so much capital.
To get the hell out of the way. And they have so much capital. They've got about $1 trillion and $1.5 trillion of capital sitting on the sidelines. It was in the Wall Street Journal last week, so it has to be true. That's a whole lot of money. What I'm saying is, when this cloud of fear dissipates over the economy, and when I talk to businessmen and women, they say, look, I don't want to add that extra worker, I don't want to make that investment right now, because Washington is now treating me like I'm an enemy combatant with Obamacare, with all these higher taxes, with the whole rhetoric out of Washington that if you're rich, that somehow you're evil. The way that the left has somehow demonized Bain Capital. I mean, Bain Capital is a great company that has financed major iconic companies that have, hired tens of thousands of workers. All of this is a part of a kind of war against wealth, a war against success, and that's, I think, what's part of what's at stake in this election.
All right, but if I'm hearing the premise right, you believe that $1.5 trillion of business ready to happen. They've got the cash. They just need some certainty. They need to know that the IRS
Not
isn't going to.
certainty. They need. Well, they need the certainty that the government isn't going to come after them. I mean, look, if Barack Obama's reelected, we're going to have certainty, right? We know pretty much what he's going to do, but it's not the kind of certainty that they want.
We still won't have certainty because we're still not going to know about tax rates. We're not going to know about environmental policy.
Well,
we're not going to know about
up. I mean, so I don't always buy this argument that it's that they want the right policies. They just want to be left alone. I mean, look at Obamacare. That's a huge killer for small businesses.
All right, I'm seeing two different things here. On one side, I hear you saying that if we have regime change, we're set for perhaps a huge economic liftoff, that businesses are ready to roll.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm looking at, we have, 3 times the amount of dollars floating around in society than we did 4 years ago. We've got massive debt unheard of in peacetime. We have $150 trillion of unfunded mandates that we can't hit. And so I'm hearing business might go up, but I'm thinking, when is inflation going to hit? When is the economic reality?
Well, that's all true, because
that our dollars should be worth a third of what they are.
Yeah. That's the flip side of this. We have put ourselves in a bit of a rut where, for example, right now we have record low interest rates, right? I mean, you can get a 30-year mortgage for what, less than 4% now.
You can. I work for the Independence Institute. There's no way I can qualify.
You know, it is true that we're in a bit of a rut, because if the economy does start to expand, then interest rates are going to go up. And as interest rates go up, the debt's going to go up, because one of the major expenditure items in the budget. So you're right. I mean, but on the other hand, if you grow the economy, if you get 3, 4, 5% growth, which I think we're really capable of, given how steep that recession was, and we still haven't even recaptured all the ground that we lost. You grow the denominator of the economy, or the debt to GDP ratio falls. So good things happen when you get growth up. The cancer in the economy right now is we've got this pathetic, pitiful growth. You're never going to balance the budget. You could have Barack Obama come in, and even if there weren't Laffer curve effects, and he wanted to raise the tax rates to 90%, there is no way you're going to get this budget even near balanced unless you get more rich people, and you get more businesses, and you get more people working, and all of these things, and then they will pay more taxes.
Talk a little bit about that nasty 47%. The man was right.
He was.
40%, 47% of Americans don't pay any income tax. Now, mind you, they pay other taxes, including sales tax and property tax through the rent and
but here's
other,
the point.
other things.
I mean, and you know, I just did a debate with some liberals on this. You do the liberal side very well, but no, it's true that they pay payroll tax and all these other taxes. But what the income tax is the primary tax that we use to pay for the federal government. It's what pays for our national defense. It's what pays for our court system. It's what pays for, you know, the other things, most of the other government services that we get, other than Medicare and Social Security, which are paid through that payroll tax. Well, don't you think that everybody should help pay for national defense and for the courts and for the police and things of that nature? I
live in Boulder, Colorado. Nobody there wants to pay for defense. So we'll let you Republicans pay for that. But the point being, we are on that verge where democracy falls apart. I don't know if it was
that's intentional. That is intentional.
Talk to me.
The liberals have set this system up where they want to have a system where, you know, 50 to 60% of Americans pay no taxes, maybe more, and then right now you already have a system, according to Tom Coburn, the senator from Oklahoma. He found that 57% of Americans, almost 6 out of 10, live in a household that is getting a government check. So this is a dependency state. It is moving us towards Europe, but we're not there yet. I mean, Europe is still you know, the way I like to put it, we're the least rotten apple in the cart.
That's what an optimist thinks. All right, but put it in these terms, that we're now at 57% of households are part of the dependency society. That is an insult.
That's a problem.
You know, that dependency sounds like,
wait.
We're talking about people who are getting their Social Security, or they're on Medicaid, or they're on
food stamps,
or they're on food stamps. These are good, wonderful, feel-good things. You're making them sound like a dependency. Isn't this just part of the safety net?
Well, I mean, look, I do think we should have we're a rich country. We can afford to have a safety net of people. Look, if you lose your job, I don't have a problem with 13.
You know something I don't know?
26 weeks of unemployment, but 2 years of unemployment benefits, 46 million people on food stamps, where they're basically going into the inner city and signing people up for these programs. I have a real problem with that. I mean, to put it, you know, very simply, you know, there are people sitting in the wagon and people pulling the wagon, and the United States is getting close to where there's more people sitting in the wagon than pulling it, and that doesn't work very well.
I think it wasn't de Tocqueville, but I'm trying to remember who said that democracy fails when people feel.
Karl Marx. Might have been.
When people realize they can vote themselves a raise from the Treasury.
And that's what's happened.
And we're getting very close to that point where if half the people don't put into it, it's easy to think that what comes becomes a personal right or an
And we're seeing that, by the way, John, in Europe. I mean, the reason Europe is incapable, I'm a bear on Europe because I don't think they're politically capable of dealing with their problems. You see this when you're seeing riots in the streets of Athens. The Europeans have come to view all these benefit programs that you're talking about like they're human rights, that you can't take them away from people or you're, you know, violating their human rights. I don't think we're that far along, John, but I think we are, you know, marching down that road.
Talk to me a little bit about what the difference is, because I'm seeing two scenarios. Let's play both cards. Romney wins. Romney wins. It means that God forbid, we have a Republican House, a Republican president.
And maybe even a Republican Senate.
Maybe a Republican Senate. Last time that happened, we had a guy in office who was fiscally illiterate, and we had Republicans that acted like drunk Democrats. It was an embarrassment, and it really teed the ball up. I mean, how bad that was. That was taking up the ball
for Pelosi and Obama.
Right, and Obama put it on steroids. But tell me why that's a better situation than having a Republican House, maybe a Republican Senate, and
well, John, I generally
Obama.
believe that for the most part, if you look over the last 50 or 60 years, actually divided power is usually the best scenario. I believe that it is extremely important that Barack Obama, and I don't dislike Barack Obama personally. I think the fact that he's a black president, I think the fact that he's got this darling family, that his whole story is a wonderful story, and only an America story. It's just that he doesn't have the right core set of ideas about how to make things work. And given what has happened over the last 4 years, the $5 trillion in national debt, the stimulus plan, cash for clunkers, all this money creation, all of these programs, the Obama healthcare plan, I believe it is extremely important that voters repudiate that and say, no, we're not going to have 4 more years of that. And that's why I think this is a really important election, not because it's important to elect Mitt Romney, but it's important for the voters to say no to Barack Obama, the Democrats.
What if they don't?
If they don't, then I think it's a problem, because then Obama's health care plan will be implemented. Those tax rates are going up. Now, look, you never undercount and underestimate the animal spirits of the economy and the strength of our entrepreneurs to grow through even the most high barriers that government sets. So you could even still the economy do pretty well if Obama's elected, but I just think it does a lot better if he's gone.
If he stays, here's the Libertarian argument. I'm going to go vote for Gary Johnson, and by the way, I'm not. I'm going to go vote for Gary Johnson, and yeah, that'll cause Obama to become president again, but things are going to get so bad that coming in 4 years, we'll be able to go in and change things. And that we've got a guy who's going to put more into defense when we need cuts in defense. We've got a guy who put in a health care system in Massachusetts, which isn't all that unlike what the president wants to do or put in. So let's get a real Republican in. Let's do that in 4 years. We've got this check and balance system.
So I'll tell you the problem with that. One is that the people are forgetting about the Supreme Court. I mean, whoever wins this election is probably going to have possibly two appointments to the Supreme Court. So you're not just talking about one branch of government, but two that could shift to the left in a pro-government direction. And these guys are living, they're 80 years old. You could have, these Obama Supreme Court appointments on the court for 30 years. That's number one. Number two, think of the damage that Barack Obama can do if he doesn't have to face the voters again. I mean, think of, the things that he didn't get done, cap and trade. Think of what that does to our
energy industry. But we have a Republican Congress. You'll be safe.
Well, I mean, it's true that if you have a Republican Congress, you do have that. You do have that safety guard. But look at what, this, Jon. I mean, you see this in Colorado. Look at the damage that, isn't Salazar from?
Oh, yes.
I mean, he's been, I don't want to offend any
don't worry,
viewers,
we're not offended.
But, I mean, I think he's been one of the worst interior secretaries. Just last month, he took 10 million acres off line for drilling in Alaska. And that's how those people live off the oil money. So
I think people have a hard time.
My point is the regulatory structure. You can do so much damage with regulation, and that's outside of the purview of Congress.
You also didn't mention Obamacare, which is...
And that's going into place. Yeah, well, I did say that. Right. I mean, if he wins this, that stuff is going into place, and that's 1/7 of our economy.
The regulatory part, I think most Americans have a hard time understanding that the president has incredible power, particularly now when it comes to regulatory issues. One of the reasons you mentioned earlier that businesses have all this cash, but they're unwilling to use it, is because they know the EPA is going to shut them down. They know OSHA is going to be a problem. They know all the way down these federal environmental rules that Obama has been putting in around Congress. This kills economic growth. And if he stays in, that's only going to get worse.
More of it. Yeah, and that's right. And one of the faults I have is that these regulatory agencies, I believe, are extra constitutional. In other words, we're supposed to, if you learned in your civics class, we have 3 branches of government. Well, really, we have 4, right? Because we do have the legislative branch, the executive branch, and judicial branch, but then we have what I call the regulatory branch. It's not in the Constitution, but we created these agencies, what we call the ABC agencies, everything from, the FDA to the EPA. And they have enormous powers. And you're right. When I talk to businesses, they say, you know, the problem isn't Congress, the laws Congress is passing. It's that the way these people are.
And there's a difference between laws and rules.
That's right.
Let's go to Mitt. Right now, the polls show Mitt behind. And in those swing states, if Mitt doesn't get Ohio, which right now it doesn't look like he will, that can change. A month is a long time,
right,
particularly in politics. If that doesn't change, are these polls right? I mean, if he doesn't get Ohio, he needs Colorado.
Yes,
it's an absolute must-win.
Absolutely true. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, and your viewers know this, but the fate of the Western world rests on your shoulders. I mean, in a lot of ways, that is true.
It is amazing to think that Colorado will decide, not just
could decide.
And this presidency, it's not just another presidency. Fred Barnes made an interesting comment to me. He said the problem that Mitt has is he's running this election like it's any other presidential election. Well, his policies are bad and my policies are good, and I'm going to create these jobs and he hasn't. No, we are at a turning point in American history from which we might not be able to steer back from.
I agree with
and
Fred,
if he makes that point, Mitt can win. Mitt hasn't made that point.
Yeah, that the stakes are gigantic.
And Colorado
gets to decide. And this isn't just a personality contest. I mean, look, you know, as you said, who do you want to have the beer with? You want to have the beer with Obama. Who do you want to run a company? Who do you want to run a country? you want Mitt Romney. He knows how to run things. Now, look, I've been disappointed with, I was disappointed with George Bush Sr. He came in and did a lot of the wrong things. Bill Clinton ended up being a better president than I thought he would be. So sometimes you get decided, you get an unexpected upside with some of these guys. But we know Mitt Romney, Barack Obama at this point. We know what he stands for. We know what his ideology is. And I don't see him moving to the center. I really don't.
No. Bill Clinton, at the heart, Bill Clinton still believed in, I hate to say it this way because it sounds so neoconish, American exceptionalism. I think he believed in free enterprise.
I think so.
And, he made a statement, this is, the end of...
The era of big government is over. Yeah.
The era
Can
of
you
big
imagine Barack Obama ever saying that?
No, the era of big government is just beginning. What does Mitt Romney need to do to win in Colorado and those other states? What is he doing wrong?
Well, I like what you just said. I think that's, there's a lot of wisdom in that he has to basically tell people, look, the stakes are gigantic here. And if we have 4 more years of this, we might have an unrecognizable country that isn't the one that we love. But second of all, he has to do something that he's done a poor job of, John, and that is he has to convince the American people that he has a plan that can get us out of this. Because a lot of the voters that I talk to are going to vote for Obama. They're like, yeah, okay, I agree. Obama's done a crummy job, and the economy's, limping along. But at least it's limping. It's not in the hole we were in before. And by the way, I just don't think Mitt Romney could do any better. That's sort of the rationale of a lot of the Obama voters. Yeah, Obama's not very good, but Romney's, he just cares about rich people, and he doesn't have a plan. Romney has to convince the American people he does have a plan to turn things around, the way Ronald Reagan did against Jimmy Carter.
How did Reagan do it? How did Reagan sell the plan? I mean, the numbers were even worse with Jimmy Carter.
Oh, he was down 8 points. No, well, let's see. At this stage, he was down 5 points.
Reagan was.
Yes. Reagan was down to Carter 5 points in October. The week before the famous debate, Reagan and Carter were tied, and Reagan ended up winning by 9 points.
Keep in mind, the big difference politically is back then we had an election day. Now we have an election month. Here in Colorado, starting October 20th, people start voting. That's election day. And Republicans seem to forget that.
That's a great point.
Democrats remember that.
Yep, excellent point. So they're running ads, in the last week, and half the voters have already voted.
And times were bad. I remember 21% interest rates. I remember 14% unemployment. By those inflation. Yeah. By those standards, we're not as bad as it was back then.
Well, actually, I kind of agree that things aren't as bad as they were in 1980, because they were really bad in 1880. But they're pretty bad right now. I mean, when you've had an economy, we should be growing much, much faster. This is, everyone knows this. This is the weakest expansion we've had, recovery since World War II. We've had 9 recessions, and this is the worst recovery. A lot of Americans, and I kind of agree with them, think it's not even a recovery. A lot of Americans think we're still in recession. And if you look at the real unemployment rate, John, you were saying we were, 9% or so here?
It's 8.2, a tick up from the
national
level.
The real unemployment rate in Colorado is probably closer to 10, 12%. even 14%. When you count people who aren't looking for jobs, when you count people who've dropped out of the workforce, when you count people who are working but they don't have a full-time salary, that's a big problem.
Help me explain this. Women are more unemployed now than they started 4 years ago. Minorities are double the unemployment rate, and those are two categories of voters. Those are two demographics that Obama has an incredible lead over, but they are all so much worse than they were before. Young people today compared to 4 years ago,
going to pay this debt?
You know, it's great to vote for Obama, but I'm still living in mom's basement. You know. Why are these demographics that are being hurt so much by this economy still voting overwhelmingly for Obama?
I think part of the difference between Republicans and Democrats generally, this is a generalization, is that you know, there's this conflict between safety and growth, right? You know, and women are women. You know, they want the safety.
What a sexist thing.
They want the blanket.
Chicks,
you know?
That's what you're saying.
Exactly. Men are more, you know, a bit more risk-taking. I'm hoping I'm not sounding like a sexist, but the truth that this simply is true. So women do want the kind of the security blanket of government programs to help people when they get down. And so that, but you know what, look, Reagan did fine with women voters. Even Bush, the first time around, did pretty well with women voters. So I don't think it's a big, I think that the gender gap can be.
Few seconds left. Quick predictions. The debate, which happened a couple nights ago that we haven't seen yet, who wins, and who wins the general?
I still think that right now it's a total toss-up. I still think that Mitt Romney is going to win the race because I think the voters will say, no, we can't have 4 more years of this.
Steve Moore from the Wall Street Journal, thank you so much. Go to opinionjournal.com and every place else, and Fox News and everywhere else. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Go to independenceinstitute.org. Tell a friend, and we'll see you next week.